Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. This podcast is for and about women of colour and our relationship with nature. Hosted by me, Sheree Mack. The Earth, Sea, Love podcast is committed to exploring the experiences of women of colour with Mother Nature. We want to provide spaces where the hidden voices in the environmental and conservation conversations can explore their relationship with the natural world. Inspired by our time spent outdoors, we amplify the voices of women of colour, our stories, our conversations, interviews, photography, writing, and artwork. We'll be exploring our legacies, histories, and memories which have had an influence and effect upon how we perceive ourselves within the natural world and within the environmental and climate justice movements. Welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. The Earth, Sea, Love podcast has been made possible by the funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund. Thank you. Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. And it is summer, the lazy days of summer. And I've been watching the Olympics in Tokyo. But I can't help but think about the bigger issues of the Olympics being on in Tokyo, the sweltering heat that is there, and how typhoon warnings, high winds, and heavy rainfall is also expected to reach landfall in North Tokyo. This is just another weather system that we on Earth are having to contend with, as we've had the monsoons in India. Death numbers are rising. We've got Sardinia has been hit with wildfires, and that's just Italy. So there's heavy rains that have flooded out London, and we've got those extreme weather conditions that is punishing the USA. If it's not those heat domes over the Midwest and parts of the East, then there's heavy thunder and rain in the Southwest, which is already experiencing drought. We've got flash floods, and then we've got the largest wildfires that are happening, the bootleg fire in Oregon. And also we've got the Dixie Fire in California. We've got the Pacific Northwest, which has been scorched. It just really, brings it all home, or should we say, mostly brings it all home to the global north now about the climate crisis. And this is all happening. These weather systems, these weather disasters, natural disasters that are happening around the world are a result of human actions, exploitations. I'm just hoping that people are paying attention now. I mean, as we've said on a number of occasions within our episodes, the global south has been experiencing these extreme weather conditions for decades. The global north is feeling it. I'm hoping that this means that we can all start working together, listening to each other to bring about some kind of change to get to that zero carbon emissions, cleaning up our oceans. I mean, they do say we're past the tipping point now, but I'm just thinking, not my lifetime, my children's and their children's lifetime, that we have had the time to do something. And we've got to keep hope that we still have some time to make the conditions for those who come after us better. Why I'm talking about this is because this episode is with the lovely Grace Hull from Green Soul Grace, who is all about holistic sustainability. That looks different from individual to individual. I can only look at myself and what am I doing. And I'm trying to reduce my waste, I'm trying to save water. And I've had these issues about the use of straws, but it's not right. We need to take individual responsibility, but we also, as we say in this episode, we need to join the dots and to come together and see what we can do to put pressure on these big multinational companies, which are, one hand saying, oh, look, we're doing this for the environment, we're, providing reusable bags or something. But on the other hand, they're stripping the landscape, they're doing open cast mining, scarring the landscape for fuels, for stuff we don't really need when we have got the technology to be using nature's power, solar power, wave power. So it's a really good conversation that I have with Grace. She's such an inspiration. And we touch upon her journey to become more sustainable in her actions, but holistically taking into account everything that she's doing in her life. How she's trying to change the face, really, of those who are speaking and listening within the environmental movement, within the climate justice movement. It was really good to edit this back and remind myself of things that we've said in this episode and things that we need to be moving forward with or moving on with. All right, that's enough of me going on. Thanks for being here and thanks for listening. I hope this episode does inspire you to do what you can do to help protect, save, conserve this beautiful world that we live in. Take care. Bye for now. It's so lovely to see you.
Really, really lovely to see you, Sheree. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on the podcast.
Oh no, I'm just so glad. I'm just so glad that you agreed to come on board.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and that's the thing. It's so funny and it's so lovely because I've been collating, who I would love also to be on my podcast, and I've taken a bit of a break just because I wanted to reach out to you, and it's just so nice that that you reached out as well. So it feels very serendipitous.
Yeah, man. It just makes me feel we're on the same page.
Yeah, definitely.
And it also makes me feel that we're not alone out there.
Yes.
In what we are trying to do and what we are doing. Not trying, we're doing it. and that's the thing. We are out there, and it's just people don't know. And it's not that we have to kind of be there for anybody else's validation, but for other people like us to see us. I'm not really bothered about anybody else, but for other people like us to know that it's very important. Yeah.
Very important.
And I'm glad that you just said that, because I'm at that point here, because I'm on another social media hiatus and addressing why am I on there? What is it? And I think it's that fear factor of thinking this is the way that people do find out that things are happening. And also I have to keep the funders happy that we are.
Oh, Sheree, how are you managing to balance that? Because I go through massive waves of feeling completely sick of social media and really and questioning myself and, you know, kind of really being like, you know, when you put things out there, you start to question yourself. You're like, am I doing this am I doing this really like kind of with integrity? Like, am I doing this in terms of thinking how I'm going to be received? And then you start kind of questioning your content and forgetting why you sort of did this in the first place was just to share and just to sort of document your journey and things. And I really struggle with it. And I haven't got to that place yet of using social media, but not sort of getting sucked into it. And how do you find it? Like, how do you sort of manage that?
I'm not even sure if I'm managing it. That's the thing. It's a love-hate relationship with me. And I do have to take extended times away because of everything that you've just said there. Why am I posting? What is the purpose? And posting with integrity. And, you know, it gets to the point is that, you know, when I'm picking up the phone to do something, to put it on, and I'm thinking, why am I doing, what's your content here? Have you really got anything to say, Sheree? You know,
well,
and then when you've posted, it's going back and saying, well, how many likes and how many comments? And I just don't like that about myself because it does suck you in. And then I'm looking about these amazing things that happen. And I mean, that's the thing. There's opportunities there, and we connected through that. I mean, you know, through Instagram.
There's so many beautiful things that come from it,
but there's noise, there's distraction, there's that comparison trap, and there's also thinking, am I doing enough? Am I enough?
Yeah, am I enough? That imposter syndrome. But you know what? One of, I think, the biggest things that has like come to me, which I haven't necessarily had the time to implement just because of, you know, house stuff, but to remember that social media should be the last part of your content creation, in the sense that I have a blog, like I have different platforms, and that's what I should put my effort into. And then you just sort of, you know, post on social media to say perhaps that you've got something on your blog, but it's like, this is where I should focus my energy on the creation and the creativity and the content creation, because like that is what will stand the test of time, and that is what you own. That is what can't be taken away from you. That is what can't be shadow banned. That is what can't be kind of messed up with the algorithms of, you know, bullshit kind of things of likes and stuff. It's like a consistent place that I can post when it's really just coming from my heart. And it's like, and it was a massive revelation, sort of like a proper epiphany, that I was like, oh, I have a blog, and I've been treating like social media like the blog, and my website is just this like kind of thing that I might occasionally post in. And I was like, no. And I think because, you know, there was the era of the blogs being these, you know, the massive things, and everybody had a blog, and you got like notifications and stuff. And I guess as the popularity of social media increased, you then, that kind of lessened slightly. But I feel that there might be a turnaround of that. And even if there's not, I would like to live like there is, you know, and actually focus my creation and my content creation on my space, as opposed to like filtered through where it gets distorted by just the things of like likes and algorithms and hashtags and stuff. So that's been like actually a big thing to remember, like create for your blog, like create for that space, you know, and the podcast, because it's like no one can take that away from you. No one, like, that's your thing. And it's like, again, that just classic thing of having to kind of balance being part of like Babylon system, but like resisting Babylon system is like always this kind of
it's that dance, it's that back and forth, isn't it? And it is, it's almost, I mean, like all that you've just said there, I totally agree with. And I'm so glad that you've reminded me, because I forget. And it is, I mean, I have been trying to spend more time in my blog and on Patreon, which is, you know, a lovely little community that I've created on there. Sometimes they do get the short end of the stick because I'm posting on social media. And the thing is, through writing and creating, I go deep and I learn so much about myself. And I've got some really good epiphanies and aha moments on social media. And I'm thinking, that should have been on the blog, man. And I'm getting it ass over tit the wrong way around. It should be blog first, then social media, and come see the blog. That's what I'm telling you to do. Come see the blog and get your quality.
And that's just like a sort of a garnish. It's like social media should be the garnish of content, because also I like to think back to times like, obviously we don't live in that world anymore, but you think of like the movement that Marcus Garvey created. This is what, in the early 1900s. There was no social media, but there was consistent work and connections and various things that happened. And people think that, oh, you can't create those kind of things anymore. And obviously social media is an incredible tool that facilitates us to connect in amazing ways, but you can still do it without it. You absolutely can. And I would, for my own sort of sanity and my own integrity, would much rather focus on the other side more and know that social media is this garnish and something that can absolutely be utilized for its best purposes, but structure it in a way that I'm not getting sucked in to like a bit of a mind mash. You know?
And I think that garnish, I'm going to use that. It's garnish.
Garnish.
But it comes, what you just said there, it comes down to that speed thing, and that we have to do it immediate, and it's now, while that slower pace is so much, well, it's what I'm leaning into all this year, because it's my word. You know, it's what I've learned out of lockdown, and I'm taking it with me forevermore. And I mean, it's not just for this year, it's beyond, going beyond. But that slower pace. And I think that so feeds into what you're doing. And like, you know, we've been talking about social media. It wasn't even on my agenda, but I'm so glad that we talked about that. But it's like, first of all, it's like, welcome, Grace.
Oh, thank you.
But like, to ground us and situate us, I usually ask is like, where are you in the world? And are you close to nature? Can you see nature from your windows?
So currently I am in my new house in Essex, in Chelmsford, and I am looking out the window. And I can see some beautiful cherry trees, and I think there's a magnolia tree and a lovely space of green in front of these flats, so I can see lots of nature around me. And the room might be a little bit echoey just because there's nothing in the house at the moment. We just moved in and it's all very chaotic. But I am very much grounded in nature, even through this chaos, because there's a lovely garden that we have at the back and a lovely garden that we have at the front. So there's just, you know, the greenery is around me constantly, which is wonderful. And very, very soothing in this time.
It's needed, and congratulations on making a move, because it's one of those big life-changing events that can suck the energy out of you, even though it's exciting. And you know, you're moving, you know, pastures new and all that jazz, but it can sap your energy.
Changing your bills, changing your banks, changing all of this stuff, and you're like, oh my goodness. And this is the first time I've sort of done this, you know, as an adult. I'm doing this with my partner, but it's like, wow, you know, you just want to start thinking about like shelves and cushions and all of this, and it's like, no, it's council tax, and it's this and that, and bin days and recycling, which is great, but then it's like, it's just all of this responsibility. But and of course doing it in a time of restricted or limited kind of services as well. Because do it.
I totally get it, because I did a move in September, and it was like in a little window of some things being a bit more open, but I must say I did everything online. I hadn't even seen the place I was moving into. I just saw it online, and I thought, right, I'm just going for it.
But just something spoke to you.
And it had to be done for personal reasons. It had to be done. But it was a case of like, I'm gonna go, and you know, it was a case of like, there was that push and that pull. The pushing was, and you know, all around it is that fear factor. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's a big move.
All of that. But you know, for all intents and purposes, like, you know, you're going to be okay. It's just the process of it, and then when you're on the other side, you're like, breathing. Absolutely.
So congratulations on your new place, and I wish you luck in there. You know, it sounds like I'm finishing off now. Okay then, bye for now. Nice talking to you. No, so we've got where you are. So let's talk about, what do you do? I mean, what do you do within your small space? Or not even going to say small space, because it could be a small space for you if we're doing comparisons, but I think it's a really impactful space that you've created there.
Oh, thank you.
And no, it's such a welcome space. So tell everyone who's listening, what do you do?
What do I do? What do I do? Well, I try to, or I do. Let me say not try to, because I know it's important to kind of speak with clarity about these things and not try and minimize.
Yeah,
but
that's what it is.
Yes. Okay, so to start, I heard, I don't know if you know the lady Leah Thomas, who is she's starter of intersectional environmentalism and Green Girl Leah. She's amazing, but I saw something that she posted where she kind of was looking for the word about perhaps to describe what she does, and she sort of used the word eco-communicator, which I thought was a really, really cool term. And I guess when I then thought about the things that I try to do in my life, it's a lot about communication of ways, of how people can live in ways that most benefit and impact themselves positively and the environment around them. And I mean, you know, if people take inspiration from some of the things I'm sharing, if people then sometimes feel empowered by some of the things that I'm sharing, because I truly believe that everybody has the sort of the ability and means to live in ways that are holistically sustainable, all within their own remits, like all within their own circumstances. And I just try to sort of show an example and show like share my journey, which is a journey, and there's no right way. There's no, there are, obviously kind of wrong ways, but there's no one particular right way of how to live in a way that's holistically sustainable, and to encourage people to know that they can do it at whatever stage of life that they're in, whatever circumstance that they're in, to make changes or to kind of implement ways of thinking that don't break the bank, that don't kind of like make them feel that they have to have a particular aesthetic in order to kind of fit into this particular narrative. And I try to do that through my blog, as we were sort of talking about, and I need to pay more attention to that and put more back into that, but through just sharing, tips and tricks or just examples, and also just being and kind of just to be a brown girl out here, just sort of trying to live in a particular way, and to just be like, someone be like, okay, that person kind of looks like me, or that person has a sort of similar cultural background that I do, and like that looks cool. Like I don't really know or haven't really seen other people kind of doing that look more like that. Like, maybe I can also do this too. And yeah, just to sort of show that there's just no one way of living sustainably, quote unquote.
So can I just take a step back? And it's about sustainability in a holistic way, or as you say, holistic sustainability. I could have an understanding of what that means, but what does that mean to you and what you put out in the world, please?
Well, I think it's about the thing that is at the core of my ideas about holistic sustainability is that the conversation has to be rounded, and you have to think in a round sense with nuance about the ideas of sustainability. And why I like to put holistic on the front of it is because there are a lot of conversations that talk about sustainability and eco-friendly living and various things that are very, very imbalanced, that are very black and white, that sort of might focus specifically perhaps on maybe being the type of diet that you might have, and often, and very understandably and very positively, a vegan diet is promoted as one of the biggest ways that you can make a positive impact on the climate, and that absolutely is true. But then there's not any conversations necessarily, there's not conversations, there are, but in the mainstream, often the conversation isn't extended to the people who perhaps pick all of the plants and the fruit and vegetables that you might eat as a vegan, that is that kind of being done in an ethical way? Like, what are the wages saying? Like, where's the packaging? Is the packaging recyclable? All of these things where, again, it basically comes down to the fact that everything that you do has an impact. Everything that you do has an impact. Nothing is impact free. So we need to make sure that we're having a conversation about it all, not just the bits that kind of like most sort of like fashionable or most trendy or kind of things, and make sure that we have a conversation about it all and understand that people's circumstances will dictate what they can do. And we have to be judgment free about that, and encouraging and understanding. And also, one person sort of like, when one person, I've forgotten the word, but where you kind of reconcile your choices, because you're like, this is the circumstances I have, this is what I can do, this is what I can afford, these are also my tastes, these are whatever, are always going to be very different to somebody else's choices that somebody has made. So somebody might be a complete, local seasonal vegan, but then chooses to shop via Amazon for a lot of their products, and Amazon is incredibly unethical in many, many, many levels. But you've made that, reconciliation to yourself and your justification, which is totally your business. But then somebody who might eat local seasonal, meat from like 2 miles down the road and very seasonal, but then tries to buy everything locally, independent shops, zero waste, plastic free, has made them sort of like a compromise as well. Like, just, yeah, I think it's just this understanding that nothing we do is impact free, so we have to kind of make allowances for the choices that people make, and also understand that we can all have an impact with the small choices and the small changes that we make. So to celebrate those and to encourage those, and to not stand in judgment and to not stand in righteousness, and believe that there's just one way to be sustainable, because our diverse cultural, heritage background all inform these things, and they should be celebrated, and they're wonderful. But it might not look like that other person's version of sustainability. It might not look like this, sort of the kind of classic, very beautiful sort of Scandi living linen vibe, which is, I love it. I love it all. But that's just one, version of it. So
and I think that's important. I mean, there's a number of things to pick out there. It's like everything that we do as an individual has an impact, and it's the individual recognizing that. But then also, as you're saying, is okay, this is what I'm doing, but not actually judging other people for what they're doing or not doing, because we don't know their circumstances. And it's about that variety, and about seeing those variety of different ways of living, or trying to live in better ways. For us as a species, the plant species, and every other species on the planet, and the planet itself.
Exactly.
But I take responsibility for me, but I do have an issue here, and we're about having these discussions, but then also having these discussions about the individuals, but then also taking it to the next level. And if we think about big business and corporations who point the finger at the individual and say, well, you should be doing this. While we know behind what they're doing with their other face is investing in big agricultural stuff that are growing grain that is feeding the cattle who are farting and pooing all over, that is doing the CO2 levels.
Sheree, you're absolutely right. And that is also one of the biggest things as well, is trying to encourage people to connect the dots, and that is absolutely part of the holistic idea, is taking the individual actions and magnifying it into something bigger. So you might have people who do amazing stuff in their day-to-day lives in terms of their understanding of their impact, and not using plastic bags or reusing or shopping at a zero waste store, doing fantastic things. But that has to be magnified into a bigger sort of sense of participation and engagement in the wider context of environmental issues. And one of the biggest kind of scams that this world has done, and they, quote unquote, is to make people feel completely responsible for the environmental and climate crisis that we're in, which is absolute bullshit. But we absolutely do have an individual responsibility. So it's about marrying up. I know that if I drop litter on a beach, that litter is going to go into the ocean and affect sea life. the use of plastic straws is going to affect sea life. All of these things. Absolutely, I have an individual responsibility for that and, you know, many more things. But then I also know that if then 100 companies are producing, you know, more or less 100 companies are producing over 70% of carbon emissions, there's a talk that needs to be had on a wider scale.
Exactly.
You know, and I will not be made to feel responsible for the sins of the massive companies, and made to feel like my choice to perhaps have a takeaway that comes in plastic boxes is causing the, you know, climate crisis. I won't have it, Sheree.
And I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
That kind of like guilt and anxiety, which is part and parcel of the fear that is generally just mongered in this world with every kind of issue that we're being faced with, and this absolutely, I feel, on purpose sort of push to make people live in fear and make people feel paralyzed, make people feel impotent. It's not by mistake.
No.
It's absolutely by design.
On purpose.
And absolutely. And I refuse to be sucked into that. So I'm ever the optimist to know that we can do so much and we can make changes, but it has to be exactly like we're saying, from an individual actions magnified. We have to connect. We have to show solidarity. We have to, you know, hold businesses to account. We have to hold governments to account as much as possible. And, you know, social media is fantastic for the sort of the social solidarity and the community solidarity. Also, obviously, as we know, that there's a slight flip side in the sense that there's a lot of sort of surface connection and not a lot of depth and kind of like follow-up research and kind of like, you know, comprehension and fully reading captions and all this kind of stuff. There could be like a flip side of social media, but when it works and when it connects and when it sort of pushes things, it is fantastic. Fantastic. So powerful. So that for me is the holistic aspect of sustainability, because if somebody who kind of doesn't choose to sort of engage in the wider issues, which basically, you know, understanding like holistic sustainability means that you have to understand and engage in intersectional environmentalism, intersectional sustainability, intersectional climate issues, because you have to have an understanding that everything is connected. There is no such thing as a single issue. There is no such thing as saying to somebody or community, you need to use less of this, or you need to do more of this, or you need to live in this particular way, without understanding their socioeconomic kind of position, their cultural influences that, you know, that encourage or, you know, dictate that they practice certain things. And I feel that a lot of the environmental movements, the kind of classic mainstream environmental movements, definitely work very intersectionally, if that's a word. Intersectionally. And that's why we have a very kind of whitewashed, one-dimensional, black and white kind of environmental movement in the mainstream that doesn't speak for or to many people,
or even listens,
exactly. And it shouldn't even be that there is just one particular person or group of people speaking, you know. So that is like, that for me is my sort of definition of the holistic element of sustainability. So I try to always remember and incorporate that. And it's hard because sometimes, like we're talking about the social media thing, you sort of want to post something that's just very quaint and nice, and like, you know, some nice jars full of lentils, which I love and which is lovely, but then you're like, oh, but then is this too flippant, and do I need to sort of talk about like politics or something with it, you know, like, and it's really, I just want to, I don't know if I found the balance yet of that, because we also need joy, and we also need lightness, and we need, you know.
You just took the words, man, because that's it. We're saying about the holistic sustainability, but we also have to think about the people within this. So like, our holistic being is that we're not just all politics or serious or the strive or the struggle. We have joy, we have pleasure. I'm all for leaning into that, and also to be it seen, shown, because there is an element around black and brown bodies that it's the spectacle, and it's the spectacle that is pain and suffering, and it's not just from others that want to see that, but that's what we also project outwards, because we deny ourselves this joy, or as you just said, Oh my
You're
gosh,
so
like,
right.
I mean, like, I am giddy and goofy and silly, and
Yes.
to put that face out there, I mean, I try, but sometimes I think, well, I'm going to be judged harshly because that's not what
Yeah.
expected of me, and also because I am seen as representing the race.
And isn't it incredible what your mind goes through and what your kind of, you know, the thoughts that go through your head before you, you know, maybe post something or think, and it's like, oh my God, this is not what it's supposed to be about. And I think maybe that is the flip side of the social media aspect, where maybe I wouldn't feel that as much if it was just in my own space, you know, like on my own blog and kind of things. But there is this expectation from within and without the community, so to speak, you know, quote unquote, that if you aren't constantly talking about the struggles or commenting or, you know, providing a commentary on the awful things that are happening and continue to happen and will continue, you know, to happen in the future, by all, you know, by all intents and purposes of what we see, then we're not representing well enough. We're not kind of doing the job. We've sort of forgotten the struggle and things. And we, you know, as black and brown people are constantly, just by existence, living in this struggle. We live in it just by being and existing. So how we then choose to sort of like engage or live or exist in other ways, it's like just totally up to us. Like we can, and it shouldn't, there's no kind of binary. It shouldn't be either or, because we're everything.
Exactly.
We are the joy, we are the struggle, we are the pain, we are the loss, we are the kind of grief, we are the tragedy, because we just are, you know, but then also, you know, the happiness. And so I think that there is that element where you sometimes feel like, if I'm not posting about the serious stuff all the time, am I doing a good job? Am I doing my job? And it's like, no, actually, joy is so needed and joy is so important. You have to keep spreading it, because it's bloody hard to find at times. In it.
And I just sometimes share that with colour. You know, just having loads of colour within my life, on my person. It's like...
Oh, no, Sheree, I love that. And it's so important just to see, not, you know, the struggle narrative exists whether or not we engage in it. Exactly. So it's there. It exists. So actually, how about let me just leave that for, you know, for a while.
And let me take that walk amongst the blossom, get into the sea. Feel the rain, you know?
Sheree, the fact that you live near the sea, I'm just so jealous. Where exactly? What exact area are you?
It's the northeast coast, so the closest city is Newcastle upon Tyne.
Yes.
So it's close to the Scottish border. So my county
amazing.
Is Northumberland. So, you know, the rolling hills and the uplands, and then the beautiful coastal line up to Scotland with the North Sea. And I am actually, you know, when we're talking about social media and documenting our journey, and that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be walking the coastal path, about 65 miles in June, to know more about the land that's on my doorstep, because it's usually a case of skip through Northumberland to get to Scotland. But I'm thinking, because I'm a writer in residence for the region, but also because, like, it's a way to root myself a little bit more here. And that idea that I have been searching for home with my mixed heritage. And, you know, I've come to the conclusion, my home's in my body. And so it's wherever I go. So I want to be like moving my home along the coast and getting in the sea. And I just love the idea of just slow walking and just, you know, allowing my senses to experience the world around me and share that, because that will be joy and pleasure for me.
And that is, I will live vicariously through that, and that is wonderful. But it's so funny that you've been thinking of doing that. I'm hoping, I'm kind of in the beginning stages of formulating a plan to do the Southwest Coast Path. Because my mum's family is from Minehead in Somerset. Which is where the beginning of the coast path starts. And then I want to walk all the way round and down to Newquay in Cornwall, because that's where my best friend lives and my godchildren. And I thought that would be a beautiful sort of journey to do, and to connect with my mum and my mum's sort of heritage, because she passed away a few years ago, and just to kind of reconnect with that area. But you know, and I was initially approaching it thinking like, okay, well, how many miles could I cover in a day? How long would it take me to get to Newcastle, to Newquay, sorry. But just hearing what you're saying has sort of already just made me completely reconfigure and think like, stop, whoa, slow down, like, to do it in a slow way and to actually really, really embrace and feel and experience everything around me, because I haven't necessarily been sort of living slow, so to speak, in that way. Even though there's been not like a huge amount kind of going on for me, but then everything has been like super busy with other stuff, and it's just all been in like overdrive. And actually the opportunity to really slow down and appreciate what's around me, that's already just given me inspiration. So thank you so much, Sheree. That's a lovely idea.
That makes me happy, because it is, we are going against the grain in a lot of senses of wanting to do things slow, even if we're thinking about coming out of lockdown now. And how people are scrambling and like it's like emails, alerts, and getting out there and like let's try and catch up for the time that was lost. It's like, have you not learned anything?
I guess people are probably so, like, oh my god, if something else happens, like, let's just try and cram it all in while, before like there's another lockdown. And I get it, because people are just so desperate to change. But I can't even fathom like going back to the sort of pace of life that I was in beforehand. I can't even imagine.
But the idea, they're not actually allowing anyone to go at a different pace, or to actually acknowledge that there'll be anxiety from being within your four walls and seeing people virtually to the outside world. Absolutely. And crowds and demands and like what?
Well, I mean, capitalism never sleeps, so everyone's just bombarding you with just like, come and shop here and come and do this and come and do that, and just like oh god,
rave, let's go raving, come on.
I mean, I can't, I mean, my body is like, oh yes, like a party, but like my mind, I'm just like, I can't even fathom the idea of being in a club and or even the tube or just anything. Anything.
I am just slow and steady. That's it.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
But talking about events and getting out there, I noticed that you did a recent keynote address at London South Bank University. And it was titled Holistic Sustainability and Climate Justice. So I'm wanting to know, one is like, okay, how did you get this gig? Not disallowing your capabilities or anything like that, or what you're bringing to the table, but I'm interested in like how this was, how you got approached to do this, how it was received, and also you've got climate justice in there. Climate justice, racial justice, environmental justice, justice is a really important word. I know there were so many questions.
So many questions. Well, I think, so I'll take the first one. So, I mean, as is often sometimes the case, it's sometimes just being in the right place with somebody, who sort of knows the right people. I have a very, very, very lovely friend, Barbara, who was working in the university and not in the same department, but she was friends with the person who was putting on these events and stuff. And they were talking about trying to find various people who could talk about the environment as part of this event series. And she just happened to mention my blog and kind of just forwarded it among various other things that they were looking at. And the person then reached out and asked if I was interested, because from what I was sort of putting out in the blog, they seemed to like what I was saying and thought that it would be a good fit for the event. So that was sort of how that happened, which was fantastic. And what was really lovely is that there was so much flexibility and kind of like space for me to do and create whatever it was. There was no thing of like, you need to talk about this, like we want you to talk about this. It was like, what would you like to talk about? Like, what would your thing, which in some ways is kind of slightly more scary, because there's no guidelines and there's no kind of like, it's just like, oh, just whatever it is that you like. And you're like, no, tell me what to do. And so I could kind of basically curate it around exactly what I wanted to talk about. And you cannot talk about any environmental issue and not talk about climate justice. Like, you can't talk about that. And I recently integrated on my site with the shop that we plant one tree for every shipment shipped, which is really great. I'm really happy to have that integration. And we had to sort of answer a questionnaire about it and stuff. And they said, you know, what does climate change mean to you? And I was like, climate change is means climate justice, and justice for people affected by the colonization and exploitation and kind of like imperialism that has caused there is no such thing as like climate crisis without understanding what climate justice is. There's a lot of people that are very sort of shocked, or not shocked, but like kind of taken aback by that answer to those things, because their understanding of climate change is so far removed from the issues of climate justice. Again, very much, I feel, on purpose, because no one wants to talk about these things. You know, their kind of understanding is only just about like, oh, save water and save the whales and save the polar bear and save the things, which is very important, but actually doesn't at all talk to the fact that there have been people that have been affected, people, not just animals, people that have been affected by climate, you know, the changing climate for years. But it's only now that the people who are being affected by the climate issues are more in the global north and whose skin is more pale, you know, that then kind of things are really being taken into kind of like consideration. And it's like, oh shit, well,
it's on our doorsteps now. We'll pay attention.
On our doorsteps, exactly. And this was the whole thing with the XR, the issues around Extinction Rebellion, where there was the rhetoric about, oh, our house is burning. Or no, that was then, but it was like Greta Thunberg who's saying like, our house is burning. And it's like, actually, the houses, metaphorically and literally and physically, of black and brown bodies in the global south have been burning for years, for decades, as a result of the absolute pillaging and exploitation of natural resources and the legacies of colonization and the Industrial Revolution and all of these things. And it's been happening. So how dare you only say that now? How dare you? You know, and where the traditional sort of like focus of climate change was on things like the animals, you know, animals in danger, say it was, again, very important. But there were still those bodies burning and being affected back then still. So it's kind of like, it wasn't, people weren't even acknowledged as like, it was like the cuddly polar bears or cuddly, you know, kind of thing. But you cannot talk about climate change issues and not talk about this stuff. But there are some people aren't ready for the conversation if they don't have like a kind of understanding, but also if they don't want to hear that, in the same way that people don't want to hear about racism, people don't want to hear about like
but the other thing, in the other part of the climate justice movement or raising the awareness, is also, let's be listening to these black and brown bodies who have been on the front line of climate change, climate crisis, and see what practices and tools and what have they been doing to bring us back into balance with nature. Because that is the issue. And it's because we've been raping and pillaging the landscape and the people along with it. That's why we're in this situation now.
Absolutely.
And we're not learning. If we're thinking about the past pandemic, that I'm saying past, we're still within it. And if we think about the global south, especially India and what they're going through now. And I hundreds of thousands of people infected and dying. But then I hear on the news that Britain is bought up another 1 billion vaccines so we can have boosters in winter. But then what about the people who need it now? They need it now. And that is not joined up thinking. Because, you know, how are you going to have that global economy? How are you going to get your cheap manufactured goods and clothes from the south if they're dying and they're not being able to be in your sweat factories?
Exactly. Even if you're not thinking on a level of, you know, even if you're not thinking on a purely moralistic, compassionate level,
human to human.
Even for an economic, you know, the most sort of depraved kind of cynical economic thing. Do you not value these lives?
Exactly.
For you know,
your factory fodder.
your factory fodder, you know, God forbid, but that is, we know that is the system that we live under.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just like there is no such thing as the single issue. So I can't do justice to myself as a brown person out here, you know, to have a conversation about sustainability and not talk about climate justice, not talk about colonization, not talk about the history and the reason of why we are here, not talk about the whitewashing of the environmental movement, because we just can't. The conversation is pointless.
Yes.
Otherwise.
Yes.
And I can't engage in it. I can't engage in it, which is again absolutely kind of circling back to what I was saying before. It's like I will have all the conversations in the world about how best to reduce plastic in your kitchen, and conversations I love that. Get me on jars any day of the week. But then we will also have to have the conversation about, well, what's your understanding of the wider global context of the reason why we need to reduce our plastic? Like, what you know, let's piece these things together, let's connect the dots. So that particular event was wonderful because it really gave me the opportunity to do that, name it what I wanted, and be able to kind of, you know.
So what was the response back? I mean, like, it was a virtual event, but did you see the faces in the room?
Well, I mean, I didn't see the faces, but I saw the chat sort of box and the things, and we had the questions, and the response was really great. Really, as far as I know, I think the response was fantastic, and I'm so pleased, because the thing is, I mean, I was going to say, when you give people the facts, people can't then really dispute. But there will always be people that will dispute. Like,
that's maybe how we operate. But, you know, there's people out there that got the bare facts.
Show someone, like, in the face, constant, like, this is this, and this is, like, the most biggest example of, like, racism or this, that, and the other. People will be like, well, you know, I don't really, you know, I don't really see that it was racist. Like, I don't really, you know,
yeah, man.
Like, oh my God. So obviously you can show people all the facts and people still chat shit, but people seem to be really, really, really responsive, and I feel like I got a lot of good feedback, and I've made some really amazing connections through it. Somebody then who had attended asked me to do another event, which was at LSBU as well. That was the online cook-along, which was so fun, and again also allowed for a conversation to have, like, about, like, veganism and, you know, kind of like wider conversation, which was really good and really fun as well. And just, I felt, again, I had to sort of battle through some massive imposter syndrome as well, and be like, well, what the hell am I talking about? Like, what the hell do I have to say on this subject, and bloody create a PowerPoint, and what the hell? and again, I think it was just like a good exercise in believing in yourself, and I know that I've got something to say, just like everybody's got something to say, like, and we all deserve a chance to say what we've got to say.
But the thing is like what I've been telling more on Black, brown people, because when we get invited into these white spaces, there is that, as you say, imposter syndrome, and what do I have to say, and putting on a performance, and so we're accepted and also liked. But the thing is what I keep saying is, like, we are the experts of our own experience. That is what we are bringing. That is what we're bringing.
And as long as you're not, and you know what, you always know if you're sort of being invited and you're just sort of being used as a sort of token. Or as a to fill the quota or whatever. And you know, whether or not you still engage because you think that it's good to make those connections and still good to spread the word, absolutely fine. But absolutely, like you say, you are the expert of your own experience, and that is enough. That is absolutely enough. That is enough. And as long as you've done the work and the presentation, you know, isn't shoddy, then that's fine.
Exactly. But it's just like, and if you know that you've brought yourself, your whole self, your true self to the proceedings, then you can go away and think, job well done. Don't care what you say. You know, I did a good job.
Honestly, Sheree, and I felt that after myself. I was really proud, because also, you know, after the kind of, you know, during the pandemic, I sort of had to really sit and think, what my next steps were, because I was planning to do more work with my Earth for All stuff, kind of build on the previous summer's workshops and festivals and things, which was really fun, and the kind of beginning, lots of stuff that happened within the launch of that. And then I kind of ended up doing more, the things that I was doing with Earth for All sort of started to blend more and more with the Green Soul Grey stuff. So kind of ended up sort of just amalgamating it all and thinking, having to have like a real rethink about what it was that I was sort of doing and putting out, but then also realizing that everything is fluid. Like, I don't have to kind of like, pin it down and explain it or kind of define it. And I think as well, I think the biggest thing that made me realize, again, about sort of social media, like this kind of like, is when I was sort of changing my bio on Instagram and being like, okay, well, how do I convey like everything that I do, but then making sure that people know exactly what it is that I offer, not kind of excluding anything or not kind of like whatever. And it's like, I don't think that my work or whatever it is that I do, don't feel that it has to fit in like 130 characters or however much it is. That's okay, and that's all right. And if it changes, it changes. Like if it progresses, it progresses. If it expands, it expands, and it's fluid. It's absolutely fluid. And to respect that and to lean into that, exactly like you say, and enjoy it. It's a positive thing,
and it's mirroring nature. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, full circle in terms of just if there's ever, you needed another sort of reason to kind of appreciate and ground yourself in nature, is to remind yourselves of just the cyclical, process of it, and to know where there are times of bloom and times of just like quiet hibernation, times of just small tendrils of hope and, just poking out and sort of springtime. Like it's there. It shows us everything of how sort of our cycles as humans should be, but we've just got very much out of touch with that. And to enjoy that, and times where you just might be laying low a little bit and quiet and kind of hibernating, and times when you're just out there all the time, every day posting, every day on stories, and then times when you don't see me for 3 months, and that's fine.
I love that. And I'm noticing the time, so we're coming up to the end, but I'm glad you mentioned Green Soul Grace, which is your website, and you've got an integrated shop there.
I do.
And so like the thing that I usually say is like, what's your offerings? But what I want to also say is like, which is a two-prong attack here, because I noticed that you've got a zero waste starter kit.
I do,
and I see the designs. They're African print or Kente print, So there's two things here. Tell everyone about your shop or your offerings there, but then also I'm interested in, what are your links, your heritage links? You mentioned Southwest, where your mum's from. But what else?
And then where else that would be. So, okay, so first of all, so in the Green Soul Grey shop, we have a collection of things which is ever expanding. We've got some new things coming soon of items that I wanted to create that would connect you with nature in the sense of the materials used for some of them, so like bamboo. And so connect you with nature, but also help you reduce the amount of waste that you produce day to day. So trying to eliminate the unnecessary single-use plastic, because that's also something that I've had to relearn and think about, where there is a massive push of trying to say, single-use plastic, all plastic's bad and various things, but there are a lot of people with varying, disabilities and kind of like physical impairments that require single-use plastics for hygiene, for medical things, for ease of use and stuff, and for comfort. So I know that I have to also be mindful about understanding the different people's needs and requirements for plastic, and sort of understanding that there can't just be this blanket thing, but separate conversation. But so things to kind of limit the amount of waste that you might produce. So that's bags for just day-to-day life and shopping, snack bags, reusable cutlery sets, and soon we're going to have these really, really lovely bigger sort of bread bags as well, like sort of lined with linen and things. Yes,
I love bread, mate.
Yes,
I love bread.
Honestly, I'm just a bread monster. But so that's that, and then kind of going to be also going into some other stuff soon, and sort of just expanding in that way. And then in terms of the print, I think it was just really, really important for me, again, like we were talking about before, about making sure that people, the aesthetic of waste reduction is also very, very whitewashed. And is also kind of a very particular style. Again, nothing wrong with it, but makes you sort of feel that that's the only kind of way that you can do or engage in this lifestyle. Again, you don't need to buy anything to live a life of less. That's the irony, that people make you think, green capitalism and greenwashed capitalism makes you think you need to buy stuff. But there are things that are investments that definitely help with your journey, make things easier. So when you do want to buy something, to buy good quality things that will last. But having African prints, just the vibrancy and the joy that you just get from looking at them, first of all, to just add colour to your day, but to also just sort of bring together the different worlds of of living, where it's like, yes, sustainable and, make it fashion, like, sustainable but bright, sustainable and kind of be like, just, we're out here just also being part of this conversation and embracing all the different heritages. Is that the plural? Heritae? No, it's heritages that we have, and enjoying it. And it's just like, how do you just not get filled with joy when you look at those prints and just enjoy? And it also means that I used to get them made through an absolutely fabulous seamstress, a woman called Emma, who runs Mama Luna Yoni Steam. I don't know if you've come across her, but she's incredible and makes her own yoni steaming thrones and stuff. And she makes them here. And then because of my connections, so my partner, well, by now, actually, as of yesterday, my fiance makes them.
Congrats! You kept that under wraps. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. He is Ghanaian, and even though I've been to Ghana and I went separate to him, didn't go together, but so I made my own connections, and I was like, actually, I'd really like to sort of set something up that supports and fosters a connection there. So now I get my things made in Ghana, and which is really, really lovely. So that's his heritage. My heritage is Jamaican and English. So my mum's English from the Southwest originally, and from Somerset specifically, and so I've got really wonderful, very sort of good memories and connections and existing, present connections to that part of the country. My dad was from Jamaica, and again, really lovely connections from there. But so just sort of bringing in all of the stuff, enjoying the sort of different ways that we can be sustainable and think about sustainability through the lens of our own experiences and our own heritage and our own cultures, and enjoying that. That's the sort of biggest thing that I want to kind of encourage and display and show. And just the fact that I am on a journey, and that's why I'm very, very specific, like always kind of specific to say it's a journey of holistic sustainability. It's not to holistic sustainability, because there's no definite end. And it's fluid, because at the moment what's happening in my life doesn't necessarily facilitate the kind of way that I would like to be making a lot more of my own food, or kind of shopping at particular places. Like, I'm doing a lot more for convenience and kind of ease, because everything is very chaotic, and that is totally acceptable, because that is life. And I'm not going to be filled with guilt. I do absolutely what I can when I can, and trying to find the lowest waste option possible within my circumstances. And that is the thing that all you can kind of lead by. And and that's sort of what, but then that's why sometimes even myself, I get that kind of thing in my head of thinking like, oh, am I like a fraud? I'm not even like shopping at the zero waste shop at the moment because blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, because this is life, and this is reality. There's this amazing chef called, she's not a chef, or she's this called the Zero Waste Chef, Anne-Marie somebody, I can't remember her last name, but she's amazing and has got a massive following. But she says we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing zero waste imperfectly. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And I'm one of those people who's, doing it imperfectly, but doing what I can. And if other people can be encouraged to do that by just me sharing the bits and pieces of my life and anything that I've learned along the way, and if it helps them, then I've succeeded in just like, that's all I want. That's all I want. That's all I'm out here trying to do.
And I totally appreciate it. And it is a practice. It is a practice, just like everything in life, isn't it?
Everything. And it's just a mindset, and just, And if it comes from a place of joy as opposed to a place of guilt and anxiety, then the results will be much more consistent.
Yeah.
You know, you'll be filled with so much sense of a purpose, more sense of purpose doing it, rather than feeling, oh God, I have to do this because or else I'm going to be judged by the zero waste community or the zero waste jobs or whatever. It's like, as opposed to like, oh, amazing, like I know that I've reduced my waste by this amount because I reused this and because I didn't buy this and I could find a purpose for this. How wonderful. You know, that's how it should be.
That's how it should be. But my word has been also to just offer myself that grace of like, I don't get it right all the time. So on that, you know, I offer you some grace.
Oh, thank you,
and
Sheree.
please accept it. But I just like to say thank you for sharing so openly and honestly. And it's been so lovely. It's just been like, you know, we could chat for hours.
Well, Sheree, we could, and I really hope we do again. And I'm so just overjoyed to connect with you, and I really feel excited for just future connections and future conversations. Just honestly, it's made my day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.